It's 5:47. This is Greatest Hits Radio, and gather round because it's confession time. Brother Matthew is in position, and Sister Jackie Brambles is back in position, ready for her big show tonight. What's on the show tonight, Sister Jackie?
We have got coming up tonight in our great conversation, Denise Williams will be beaming in from her home in sunny Las Vegas for our great conversation.
Excellent, but first of all, some business to attend to. Harsh Jackie from last week, very
Correct.
harsh.
Yeah.
Very sloppy from Matt, obviously lets everything
Obviously.
through. Tonight's comes from Freddie. Can I just say at the beginning of this, do not attempt any of the things that Freddie does in this confession.
Dear. That doesn't bode well.
It doesn't. Simon and the Collective. This confession goes back to the early 60s. Different times, different world and all that.
Yep.
I was about 6 years old and spending a hot summer afternoon with my friend Richard, who lived at the bottom of the hill. We'd wandered off and were messing about in the building site of what was to become the local pub. As I said, different times.
Yep.
We invented a game whereby one of us would hold up a piece of rubble and say, "Would that hurt?" The reply would be yes or no, depending on size, perceived mass, likely weight of throw, trajectory, rate of descent, and so on. Not really, we were 6. It was all about size, really. The rubble would then be launched into the air and we'd watch it hit the ground. I think you may be able to guess where this is going.
Yeah.
Distracted by mud and worms and so on, we became a little blasé about watching the impacts. We kept saying, but we kept playing. Eventually, Richard said what turned out to be the last, "Would this hurt?" I said no, and he launched said piece of rubble into the air, and it hit me right on top of my head. Now, I was very wrong about it hurting, so much so that we decided to go back to Richard's for a cold drink. As we made our way to his, I felt something trickling, and I put my hand to my head, and it came back very, very red.
Oh dear.
After a quick chat about pretending that some boy had done it so Richard didn't get into trouble, we ran to his place where his mum tended the bloody wound and dried my eyes. Come on, I was only 6. She then watched me walk up the hill safely to my dad. My dad was very concerned, wanted to know what had happened. I told him the some boy story, thinking that would be it. Now, this is probably a good place to say that my dad in the early 60s was sometimes a little hot-headed. His response to some boy was to ask for a description. What kind of a boy? What did he look like? I bluffed a bit, saying that he was at the top of the slope and a fair way away. What was he wearing? Excuse me. What was he wearing then? My dad was shouting now. Having to make something up on the spot, I blurted out, white jumper with a blue stripe across it. From the distance of years, I'm quite proud of my improvisational skills. But Dad wasn't finished. Right, he said, get in the car, we're going to find him.
Oh dear.
Hooligan. I might have removed some sweary words, says Freddie from that. What followed was what seemed like hours trawling around the neighbourhood, passing local youths with Dad saying, "Was that him?" Every few minutes, "Was that him?" Despite me being able to say no, because they clearly weren't wearing a white jumper with blue stripe, I was finding it more and more stressful. So to the nub of this confession, I don't ask forgiveness from Richard for spoiling a perfectly good, if somewhat dangerous by modern times, afternoon on the building site, nor from his mum for bleeding copiously on her kitchen floor. In those days it was lino, so easily wiped. Nor from Dad for taking up his afternoon and using up some petrol that he could probably ill afford. No, Simon, here is why I seek forgiveness. After those hours of trawling, I was understandably stressed, and Dad was getting angrier and more frustrated at not being able to thump the person who had so awfully injured his, at that time, only son. Which made it unfortunate that as we came round the corner back to the building site, having given up on the search, there was a boy in a white jumper with a vaguely blue stripe across it. Dad got out of the car, he turned back to me and said, "Is that him? Is that him?
No.
Is that him?"
No.
Forgive me, Collective, I was only 6. The stress, the pain, the angry father, the jumper, I just said yes to get it over with, and I'm still not sure why.
Oh dear.
So I do ask for forgiveness from the poor some boy in the white jumper with a blue stripe, who must have been somewhat surprised to see this slightly overweight bloke herring over the field, waving and shouting, and even more surprised when he realised that Dad was coming for him. Luckily, bloke in the jumper was young and fast, Dad, old and not athletic. So no one actually got thumped. So I hope you can find it in your warm hearts to forgive my frightened 6-year-old self for an unforgivable... Can I say, first of all, so clearly, obviously, throwing bits of rubble in the air and then saying, well, that's clearly a daft thing to do. I don't think we need to tell our audience
we don't.
But, just in case the lawyers are listening. But what are the chances that there be a bloke in a white jumper with a blue stripe? Good improvisation.
Tremendously unlucky.
Yeah, very, very unlucky. But Freddie is asking for your forgiveness, Sister Jackie Brambles.
Oh, that lovely little 6-year-old who was terrified and bleeding and, didn't want to dob his friend in. Sadly, I cannot forgive, though, because the trauma that you inflicted on that poor young Spotty Herbert with the white jumper and the blue stripe, for life. He just thinks, random people just chase you for no apparent reason. So I'm afraid the truth should have set you free, and yet it didn't, did it?
No.
No.
Okay. Brother from another gutter?
Well, we've all done pretty rash things in our youth, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not throwing rubble around on a building site, but, not far off that. And at least he had the presence of mind to think of something suitably random, such as a white jumper with a blue stripe. You wouldn't think there would be anyone with a white jumper and a blue stripe.
Maybe the 60s, it was all the rage.
Well, yes. And some would argue that wearing a white jumper with a blue stripe means you get what's coming to you, frankly, because I don't think it's a very good top at all, really. So nobody got thumped. Everyone got out of it fine, apart from having to wear a white jumper with a blue stripe. So definitely forgiven.
61054 on the text. First word is Simon. It's the people's verdict. A split verdict again in the studio. Harsh Jackie. 61054. First word is Simon. People's forgiveness, yes or no? People's verdict goes like this.
So Jimmy in Liverpool says, not forgiven. Poor boy wearing a white jumper with a blue stripe. He really was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gemma says, forgiven. If anyone's to blame, it's the father. He's the one storming around trying to find a boy with a white jumper and a blue stripe. And John in sunny Wigan says, forgiven. For the simple reason that the lad with the white jumper and the blue stripe ran away. So he must have been guilty of something.
I don't think it quite works like that, really. Anyway, maybe you have a tale for us. Maybe you fancy a smart speaker. Freddie got today's. Yours can be had by sending your confession to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. One more time, Sister Jackie Brambles back into the fold. Judgy Brambles, as she's known.
You're setting me up here.
Yes,
Clearly.
absolutely. This is the new Stern Jackie. What's on the show later, by the way?
We have Louise, or better known maybe as Louise Redknapp.
Oh, her.
She's got a greatest hits album out. She's got a new single, and last night she kicked off a West End run, appearing in Greece as Teen Angel. So she's a busy lady, but she managed to squeeze in a great conversation with us.
You can hear that later with Jackie. Today's confession comes from Phil. Thanks, Phil. You get the smart speaker. Father Simon and the Collective, I beg your forgiveness for an incident that occurred many years ago in the sunnier climate of Negril Bay, Jamaica.
Ooh.
A newly refurbished hotel was offering a greatly reduced all-inclusive stay there to boost its reputation. Now, as often happens, the hotel lays on transfer buses from the airport of arrival, in this case Montego Bay, to Negril Bay.
Okay.
This is 80 kilometres, or about 50 miles.
Give or take.
49.7. We climbed on the bus, which was already packed with very annoying American tourists, and an awful lot of 15-year-old sons. So lots of 15-year-old boys, all of them from Michigan. Almost at once, they started harassing the elderly bus driver with comments that if he was this old, he should have given up working long ago.
Ugh.
We didn't like this. Being nice guys, we helped the driver load up all the American cases into the back of his antiquated bus, with thin cushioned seats, windows that did not close properly, and no air conditioning. Anyway, all through the 3-hour journey over rough roads, potholes, and scary drops down steep cliff faces into quite rough seas, the driver put on the sounds of his hero, Bob Marley, playing through the coach. This led to more adverse comments from the American contingent. You got any Van Halen?
I'm digging it.
Got any good old American tunes?
Tunes. Wow.
To which got the response, yeah, man, said the driver. And more volume for good old Bob Marley. Got any Tammy Wynette? Turn up the Marley. Any Leonard Skinner?
Leonard?
More Bob Marley, and then even more Bob Marley, even louder and louder. Anyway, after a hairy road trip, we all arrived at the hotel, and the bus driver took off his hat to collect the bus fare, which was $50 Jamaican, which was about, then, 32 cents US. But the Americans, bless them, didn't realise that different dollars were used in other countries, and they hadn't checked before they left. They started saying it was a rip-off, but then pulled $50 notes off big money rolls or their money clips. Of course, the driver noticed this, but stayed silent. Now, I saw this, says Phil, and I could have pointed out that the Americans were overpaying the driver by a massive amount, but after the way they had abused the poor man, I felt justified in staying stumm and saying nothing. After the last American had paid his bus fare, there were 32 of them. At $50 each, that's $1,600, which translated at the time to about 251,177
Wow.
Jamaican dollars. The loudest and most overweight American male came back to remonstrate with the Jamaican driver, and he noticed that I and my other British friends were paying with another currency, the requested 50 Jamaican dollars. Imagine his anger and frustration as we blocked his entry onto the bus to allow the driver to start his long drive back to Montego Bay with enough money to pay for his kids' tuition through school and probably university as well.
Brilliant.
Do we feel the need for forgiveness? Well, probably yes, for all the quiet Americans, and there were some, who did not need to pay over the odds for the bus fare from the airport to the hotel, which is about 3 hours. But for the majority of the Americans who verbally abused the elderly driver, I feel vindicated for our deeds. I'll leave it up to you and the brothers and sisters online to forgive us for our misspent youth, or not, as the case may be. Just to let you know that the trip was great. We swam with dolphins, we swam in the Black River with crocodiles, and we drank samples of Appleton rum. That's actually not relevant at all, but you know, it's
right.
just extenuating circumstances. Happy days, says Phil. Well, I think I know which way this is going to go, but let's just check in. Forgiveness from Hardline Sister Jackie, what do you say?
Absolutely not. I mean, go big or go home. You should have told the Yanks, yeah, $50 plus a tip. Where are you from? So I think they could have gone way bigger with that scam.
So,
wow.
Oh, right. Okay. So you're not forgiving because they should have said $50 and then another $5 as a tip.
A distinct lack of ambition. That's why they're not getting forgiven.
Okay. All right. Well, that's tough.
Yeah.
Brother from another gutter.
Not sure I can go that tough. I mean, it would be wrong to paint all American tourists as being flash and brash and loud and rolling around with their money clips. It's unfortunate that most of them tend to be a bit like that. But, you know, I mean, you could argue the country was probably better when we were running it. But, you know, that's the way things go with the Civil War. Or the other one. Anyway, I'm going to...
Where are you taking this?
I'm going to forgive, just because obviously they were behaving appallingly, and your man got his kids through college based on them not being able to tell the difference between their own money and a foreign country's money. Unlucky, sunshine.
Oh, right. So you were talking... The country that would be better run was America.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought you might have been talking about Jamaica.
No.
Anyway, it's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Phil for his allowing the noisy and loud Americans to give all their money to the old Jamaican driver? 61054 on the text. First word is Simon. The people's verdict on tonight's confession, which came from Phil and was a story about annoying American tourists on a bus in Jamaica who, instead of paying the driver 50 Jamaican dollars, didn't realise that 50 American dollars wasn't the same thing, and so overpaid him by, instead of, well, he walked away basically with 1,600 US. Very
right.
nice, all in a day's work. People's verdict like this.
So Linda in Knutsford says, forgiven. Having been to Jamaica, I know how kind the people are. So those beastly Americans deserve what they got. Sue says, forgiven. If the loud and rude American tourists can't comprehend the fact that they are not the only country to have dollars, it's their own fault. But Gemma says, not forgiven. We cannot generalise all American tourists, as some are lovely, generous, tipping people. That being said, I expected better from Michigan residents.
We appreciate all those comments. Thank you. If you have a confession and fancy swapping it for a smart speaker, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.
Hello there. Hi, Simon. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Hello. So, very judgmental, Sister Jackie, which is live on your radio from 7 with what treats?
Well, today, of course, is Well Done Wednesday.
Well Done
For those
Wednesday.
not in the know, this is the day of the week we like to give the good people in our lives a bit of a grateful bow. We throw down the gauntlet of gratitude and invite you to bend down and pick it up, mind your back. And the challenge is this: before your head hits the pillow tonight, exhibit your appreciation out loud by telling someone who's been kind or thoughtful or gone the extra mile for you this past week, well done. And then tell us all about it. Jackie at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Anybody that you'd like to give a well done Wednesday shout out to? Simon.
Yes, I'll go for Ange Postecoglou, Spurs new manager. Well done. Matt?
Lionel Messi going to Miami.
And not Saudi. Yes.
Correct.
Very good. Okay. Now, we have this thing. Right. Today's email comes from Rory. Father Simon. I'm writing to you, for I am in dire need of absolution for a sin committed 35 years ago, and I've thought about it a lot. Time in question, I was a final year medical student at an ancient university of several hundred years standing. I was in my prime, full of confidence and arrogance of youth. My self-satisfied student smugness had reached dizzying heights by having recently successfully wooed the most beautiful qualified doctor, let's call her Sophie, not her real name, who was one of the members of the teaching faculty, much to the amazement and envy of the rest of the male students in my year group. Sophie was elegant, confident and sophisticated, with a background embedded in the, how can I put it, upper echelons of society. The matter in hand occurred during a weekend away with my amour in West Sussex. We attended a house party on the Saturday night where I met several of Sophie's old university friends for the first time. They were, unsurprisingly, all very similar to Sophie in the way they exuded self-confidence and easy charm. I had definitely found myself in a whole new but alien world of beautiful people, the likes of which I imagined would inhabit the pages of Tatler. I was out of my depth.
Yep.
The following morning, it was spontaneously decided that some of us would descend on the parents of one of Sophie's friends for lunch. The reassuring crunch of tyres on the extensive gravel drive announced our arrival at the Grade 2 listed farmhouse home of retired city accountant Gerald and his wife Annabelle. Following a sumptuous luncheon, the girls excitedly announced that it would be such fun to have a swim in the outdoor pool.
Ugh.
Owing to the fact that it was early May, Gerald expressed reservations about the temperature of the water given the time of year and the fact that the heating for the pool had yet to be started. In spite of this, he proceeded to enthusiastically peel back the pool cover. At this point, I was getting a little self-conscious, given that I was surrounded by such beautiful young ladies and I had no swimming trunks. Gerald wouldn't hear of me not joining the girls for a dip and offered to lend me some trunks. It now appeared I was cornered and that I had no choice in the matter. He returned a few minutes later, proudly brandishing a horrendous pair of bright blue satin budgie smugglers, replete with white piping down each leg.
What?
Attempting to manage a veneer of self-assurance, I met the girls by the side of the pool, did my best to ignore their looks of alarm, mixed with silent sniggers at the sight of my oh-so-tight lurid shorts. I was desperate to get into the water to hide my embarrassment, so to speak, yet a toe dipped into the water confirmed that it was breathtakingly cold. I plunged into the freezing water and began to plough up and down the pool in my best freestyle, partly to attempt to warm up and stop the blood freezing in my veins, and partly to impress the girls. I then foolishly decided to add tumble turns to my stylish strokes to enhance the ridiculous performance. Pride comes before a fall, as a misjudged tumble turn resulted in one of my feet hitting the handrail on the side of the pool. The pain was intense, yet when I raised my foot out of the water to inspect the damage, there was very little to see. When we could stand the cold no longer, we got out to change. I was given a towel and directions of how I could find the ensuite of the sumptuous bedroom of Gerald and Annabelle, where I could change back into my warm clothes. I quickly dressed and felt that loving, lovely warm glow of the circulation returning to the extremities. Before rejoining the others, whose excited voices I could hear from the kitchen below, I reached down to put on my socks. The white skin of my injured left foot was covered in blood.
Oh.
Not only this, but so was the also very white, plush, deep pile bedroom carpet, covered in blood. Footprints of livid scarlet could be seen tracking across the room in multiple directions, as if from the scene of a grisly murder. The penny dropped. I must have cut my toe on the side of the pool, but the freezing water had meant that only once my feet had warmed up did the dilated blood vessels begin to bleed, and most efficiently bleed they did. A cold, clammy feeling spread across the back of my neck as I surveyed the bloody footprints and wondered what to do. I decided to hide the evidence. With a soaked towel and soap from the bathroom, I proceeded to scrub the carpet, watching the red colour turn to pink and then something approaching white. With hopeful gaze at the scene, I left the bedroom and returned to the ensemble downstairs. Very soon afterwards, it was decided we better head home, so I expressed my gratitude for lunch as I headed out, returning the dripping trunks, to Gerald as I left. Thankfully, I never clapped eyes on Gerald, Annabelle, or anyone else who was there again, so I didn't have to face the music. I've absolutely no doubt that my best efforts at removing the blood stains from the white carpet and towels were woefully inadequate at best, and that my crimes would have been discovered probably very soon after the car had disappeared down the drive. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective, it is clear I need forgiveness. I beseech you to find generosity in your hearts, though not expecting it from Jackie, for this oft-tortured soul.
Yeah.
Because we know what Jackie is like. Well, we've learned what Jackie is like, indeed. Well, terrible society-based confession. You don't want to go swimming in an outdoor pool in May, and you certainly don't want to slash your foot open and bleed open a white carpet. What do you say, Sister Jackie?
A little like yesterday, I am not going to forgive him because I think he could have made, a bigger deal out of it. I think with the treatment that he received, and just for being given budgie smugglers alone, I think he should have trampled all over that white carpet and the bedspread, and indeed up and down the hall. So you're not forgiven. You could have done a much better job.
Quite right.
Right, okay, I can see where you're going with that. I suspect class warfare is coming up here, Brother Matthew.
How very typical of the Tatler lot to expect everyone else to fit in with their ridiculous plans. And also Gerald and Cassandra.
Annabelle.
What are you doing putting changing rooms with white shag pile carpet in it? More money than sense, some would say, and I certainly say it, so definitely forgiven.
Right, because they
chose to put white shag pile carpet in the changing rooms,
well,
and then insist everyone has to have a swim.
It was a bedroom.
Because I went to the right school and whatever.
Right. I think we're reading quite a lot into that, which wasn't there.
Up against the wall.
People's verdict, please. 61054. First word is Simon. Do you forgive Rory? Yes or no? Just before 6, we had tonight's confession, a society confession, from, in his own words, smug, confident and arrogant Rory, medical student, who fell in with the Tatler types, particularly Sophie, and then, while swimming in an outdoor pool, when it was very cold, cut his toe on the side of the pool, but because it was so cold, didn't start bleeding until he was inside on Gerald and Annabelle's white carpeted bedroom. And instead of just saying, sorry, I did that, he tried to cover it up by cleaning it and turning it all pink. Anyway, that's where we were. The people's verdict is in. Here it comes.
So not forgiven, says Sam in Aberdeen. He should have just come clean. I'm sure they'd have understood and helped him with the bloodstains. Jim says not forgiven for the primary reason you never were someone else's budgie smugglers.
I think that is definitely
It is
true.
gross and wrong. But Alice in Milton Keynes says forgiven. Completely forgive Rory. That posh lot shouldn't have had a carpet in the ensuite. Disaster waiting to happen. Quite right.
Okay, all right. I mean, a white carpet in the bedroom is asking for trouble.
Weird.
Anyway, well, it's not weird. Well, I suppose it's weird.
Yeah.
So maybe you have a carpet-based confession, or a swimming pool, or someone else's swimming costume kind of confession. Send it, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. If we like it and use it, you get a smart speaker. That in the office, shed in the office is perfectly fine.
But I have decorated it on the exterior to look like a quaint villa in Santorini.
Beautiful. Who's on your show tonight? I know the answer.
Yeah, it's a great guest tonight, and we had such a great conversation. I really can't wait for everybody to hear it. Noel Gallagher.
Excellent.
Wow.
Yes, his High Flying Birds have got a brand new album out called Council Skies. We talk about that, but we do loads more. I mean, everybody feels like they've heard everything about Oasis, of course, but we go right back to when they were a kid. You may be surprised to know the first record he ever had.
Tonight's confession comes from Ernie, somewhere on the south coast. Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Susie, Holly, Katie, Jackie, whoever.
Yeah.
My story dates back to my student days of the late 1990s. As a member of a university sports team, the drinking was as important as the playing of the sport. It was no surprise, therefore, that one Sunday evening we found ourselves in a nightclub. These were the days when drinking establishments closed at 10:30, and as we entered the club, there wasn't much time left. We bought drinks and headed upstairs to the dance floor, where our team began to strut their funky stuff. Curiously, the DJ booth was unmanned, yet the music still thumped out. Whatever happened to Bewitched, Steps, Boyzone and Robbie Williams, After hearing a familiar sequence of Spice Girls, Honeys and Billy Piper, I came to realise that the club had taken the DJ Lite option of putting on a copy of Now That's What I Call Hits
Wow.
42 in the CD player. I knew this because I'd bought it as well and listened repeatedly whilst revising for my exams. After being treated to share Believing and The Cause, wondering what they could do to make us love them, answer, get Jim to listen, learn some science, on came an epic track like this. We like to party, we like to party. The Venga bus had truly come in and everyone was jumping. Now, drunken dancing caused me to bump into our team captain, to whom I revealed it was a Now 42 CD that was playing. I knew he had done some club DJing back in his hometown. I found myself challenging him with a, I bet you can't put it on again. Well, the team captain accepted. He glided smoothly across the dance floor, then danced beside the empty DJ booth. I saw him look over the top of the control desk, and then, as the sound of the Venga Boys faded, reached over in the silence between the tracks, stabbed the button and reverberated again. He timed it perfectly, and the Venga bus was on the return journey. I congratulated him on his impressive DJing skills. We danced on.
Oh, no.
I know, that's probably enough. He timed it perfectly. Anyway, we were dancing on because we liked the track a little bit. When the Venga bus stopped to pick up passengers for a third time, one of the nightclub's bouncers came and stood at the console. He looked at the controls, trying to figure out why the Venga Boys were playing yet again. He stared around moodily, looking for culprits who might have been messing, but we were now dancing on the opposite side of the dance floor. Clever, huh? I mean, not that clever, but you know. The bouncer stood there for the rest of the song and only moved away when he'd satisfied himself that there was no further issue. We knew everything was okay because when the Venga Boys finished, the Witch Doctor song came on. And at this point, we should have been happy and just caused a little mischief and left it at that. But I was never one to know when to stop pushing the boundaries, and I uttered the words, I bet you couldn't do that again. And once again, the team captain moved across the dance floor and waited for the sounds of the Witch Doctor to die away. I can only marvel at how he was able to jab at the back button twice, skipping 2 tracks seamlessly, so that once again, it began to ring out one more time. I think that's probably quite enough.
Yeah.
Our joy was short-lived. Moments later, the music stopped, the lights came on, and everybody was asked to leave the club. It was only 10:10 on a night when it was already early closing. We were obviously crestfallen. However, I don't ask forgiveness from the club's management. After all, they'd taken the cheap route of putting on a Now CD rather than paying a DJ. And can I say paying DJs properly is very much a fine cause that I fully support. Neither do I beg forgiveness for owning a Now 42 CD. It's from the good people of our student town from whom I'm asking for forgiveness for bringing their Sunday night's drinking to a premature end and the grind of the working week that little bit closer than they'd have liked. And it was all our fault. Basically, that's what we're saying. Ernie somewhere on the south coast now pleading for forgiveness from Sister Jackie, hardcore.
Ugh. Well, first of all, the greatest sin isn't kiboshing everyone's big night out. The greatest sin is your criminal taste in music and putting that dreadful nonsense on repetitively.
The Venga Boys?
Definitely not forgiven.
All right. Okay, not forgiven. Okay. Is it anything to do with Arsene Wenger? Were they the Arsene Wenger Boys?
Arsene Wenger Boys. Sadly,
Nothing
history
to do
has
with that.
forgotten
Brother
that.
from another
I mean,
gutter.
this is definitely one of those confessions where you have to admire the production values of that confession. The
Thank
number
you.
of times we got some Wenger Boys in there. Pay your DJs what they're worth is the moral we're taking from that one, and I'm pretty sure everyone involved in this confession is going to go, yes, please. Yes, putting silence between the tracks. How does that work if you're a DJ? Or just putting on a various artists CD? Clearly not the same. So, yes, will
you
no
forgiving
one
or
think
not?
of the DJs? I'm still going. Forgiven.
Sure?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, but it's the people's verdict, which is what we're after. 61054. Just before the news, we heard a confession from Ernie who sabotaged his nightclub and in fact caused the closing of the nightclub so that no one could carry on dancing and nobody could carry on drinking because of boys. He just made sure that it was just constantly playing and drove everybody crazy. The people's verdict is in.
So everyone's forgiving tonight. James says, Venga Boys is an absolute tune. It was my go-to track in the club back in the day. Sam in Milton Keynes forgiven. I forgive Ernie. It is criminal, the fact that they didn't have a DJ and just shoved a compilation CD on. If anything, Ernie made the club experience so much better because they weren't having to sway to the cause. And Chris from Lowestoft...
You can't have the cause in
Exactly.
a disco.
What on earth were they thinking? And Chris from Lowestoft says, I think he should be forgiven as I did exactly the same thing in 1983 when I was working in Norway at an Outward Bound camp. The DJ left her booth and I pressed repeat on her control to Laura Branigan, Self-Control.
Which is better than this.
Definitely.
Anyway, your confession, please, would be very welcome. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.